So welcome. I'm Megan DeMatteo. I am a freelance journalist, formerly at CNBC, and currently I contribute to publications like CoinDesk, which I'm sure you all are familiar with, and Time Magazine's Next Advisor, their personal finance vertical. And I'm here partnering with Transak to host these conversations because, as I'm sure you all know, the conversations are so hard to encapsulate in just short 600 to 800 word articles. They really do warrant these kind of like rich 1 hour long discussions. So I'm so thrilled to be here. We're here to talk about all things DeFi, aka decentralized finance, which is becoming impossible to ignore. Whether you're an institutional investor, a VC, a developer, a retail investor, or just an everyday personal finance enthusiast, DeFi is kind of everywhere right now. Quick background, DeFi Summer, I think the first one that we had was back in 2020 when DeFi protocols became more widely used. But as we know, last year in the summer of 2021, some people were calling it a DeFi Summer 2.0 after the combined TVL, or total volume locked, of all DeFi protocols grew exceptionally fast in just a year's time. I pulled this quote from CoinDesk. At the start of 2020, the combined TVL across all DeFi platforms was around 630 million, according to DeFi Llama, which is an analytics firm. And more than half of that was just in one protocol, MakerDAO. And then that particular project grew to about 241 billion by the end of 2021. MakerDAO was one of the largest protocols, along with some others that we saw coming through, such as Curve and Aave. And by the end of 2021, these had more than 10 billion in TVL each. So exceptionally fast growth rate. DeFi is arguably here to stay. Crypto is now officially $1 trillion industry. And while, as we know, that's still relatively small compared to TradFi, which makes up the lion's share of the activity, DeFi promises an arguably revolutionary way for people to lend, earn, trade, and invest. So there's a lot to talk about today. Some quick housekeeping. The conversation will be about 45 minutes, leaving just about 10 minutes for audience Q&A. Feel free to chat amongst yourselves in the chat, but we do have some tech support and some ninjas behind the scenes, so any kind of crude or inappropriate commenters will be removed, but feel free to talk and share your thoughts, share your reactions with each other. Use this space, use this time to make connections. For the Q&A at the end of the session, we'll have you drop your questions in the Q&A box, which is down at the bottom next to the reactions. And that is how you can put your questions in. In the last 10 minutes, I'll pick some of those questions to ask to the panelists, and hopefully you'll get your answer that you're looking for. So without further ado, let me introduce our guests. Today we have Luigi DeMeo, who is the head of DeFi at Avalanche. Luigi started his career in traditional finance, working as an institutional trader at Citigroup for 6 years with credit and equity products. And then he founded his own venture-backed app in 2018 and has been involved in crypto ever since. More recently, obviously, Luigi joined Ava, and we're so happy to have you here. Do you want to just give us a little wave so that the audience knows who you are? Awesome.
Nice to be here.
Cool. And then we have Fatima Kazieva. Fatima is the product manager for Zapper Mobile. She's a part-time chess player and full-time Web3 addict who's passionate about onboarding new users into the space. Hey, Fatima, we're so happy to have you.
Hey, everyone. Thanks.
And then we have Shane Hong from Kyber Swap, head of strategy. Shane leads the strategy team at Kyber Swap, a blockchain-powered liquidity hub that enables the efficient trading of digital assets at the best rates in decentralized finance, or DeFi. Hey, Shane, how you doing?
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here.
And last but not least, we have Transact co-founder and CEO Sami Start. Sami is the co-founder and CEO at Transact, which is one of the safest and fastest ways to buy 100 plus cryptocurrencies on over 75 blockchains. Sami is based in London and has worked in high frequency trading and B2C fintech before founding Transact. What's up, Sami? How you doing?
Hey, I'm good. I'm good.
So we'll kick it off with a kind of roundtable question. I would love to hear from you all to start in, just a minute or less. How would you kind of define decentralized finance in your very own words. We'll start with Luigi.
Sure. So from my perspective, decentralized finance allows the facilitation of monetary transactions without a central intermediary. That is probably the most important innovation that it's brought to the space, and that could be in numerous types of things, such as being able to swap assets, borrow and lend against them, and then hopefully a lot more in the future as well.
Thank you very much. Let's hear from Fatima next. How would you describe decentralized finance?
I think it looks quite similar. I do put an emphasis on eliminating the centralized intermediaries, and there's a lot of automation going on with DeFi. So you're eliminating them, but you're replacing them with automation, which makes it more efficient, faster, and safer.
Love it. Thank you so much. Shane, what's your definition?
Yeah, I think it's basically bringing all the traditional financial products that everyone is very familiar with to a decentralized network, aka like a blockchain, and leveraging all the benefits of a decentralized network, right? Mainly that it's permissionless, it's accessible to anybody with a blockchain wallet and the internet, and removing like the middleman intermediaries and all the other subsequent benefits that that can be derived from that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Sami, how about you?
Okay. Well, I would say that decentralized finance is like online finance, but the difference between decentralized finance and normal finance is that the code runs on the blockchain. So instead of running on a server of a centralized entity, like Luigi said, it's running on the blockchain. And then the data is also stored on the blockchain. So your balances, your positions are also stored on the blockchain. So like if you have a position with a bank, the bank can just go into their server and change it. They wouldn't do that for a number of reasons, but they could. But in DeFi, no one can do that, right? So using the consensus algorithm of the blockchain, there would have to be a 51% attack for someone to change it. And then the implications of that is that you don't have to trust any centralized authority, but it also allows a much faster rate of innovation. It allows more efficiency because, like Fatima said, it's all automated, and there's no like people in suits who need to like stamp pieces of paper in order to get a transaction through. So what that results in is better products for users, like more innovative products, lower fees, faster, better, easy to use as well.
I love that. And then the suits can just be worn because we like to wear suits.
I mean, I still don't mind wearing a suit from time to time.
Yes.
But we don't need to pay lots of people to do it. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I also think it's interesting to think about from an institutional point of view. These like big financial institutions also carry the risk of carrying all of that data. And when it is on a decentralized ledger like blockchain, then it creates more transparency and lower risk for everybody too. So it's something to think about for sure. Okay, now let's hear from you all about, the topic of today is unlocking the barriers to DeFi, because we talk about DeFi from this conceptual place of it being permissionless, decentralized, totally accessible. But, in reality, there's a learning curve. And, and so I want to hear from you all about what you think the biggest barrier to DeFi is, that's stopping, I guess, mainstream adoption for this kind of conceptually super accessible and perhaps even like almost egalitarian way of trading. What are the barriers to it? Why isn't everybody doing it yet? Let's hear from Fatima first.
I think that there's been a lot of ongoing conversations on that, so it's a very trendy topic. Is if it's so great, if DeFi is so amazing and it's changing everyone's life, how come people are not using it as, like we are in this space, in the crypto space, but how come it's not mainstream? From what we see at Zapper and in this space, I think a lot of the friction happens on the wallet level. Of course, everyone is kind of aware of it. Even for people who are using DeFi every day, there's still a lot of friction. So the wallet part, the security part, understanding how to interact with the wallet to then be using protocols or to be using Zapper. It's very hard. Those wallets, they all have good things and bad things, but there's not like the perfect product right now. So what I've been seeing, at least from my daily work, being PM, developing a mobile app, is the wallet friction. And so we've been trying to solve that issue. There's a lot of other participants that have been trying to solve the issue as well. So that's a big point for us, I think, the wallets.
Thank you. Thank you. Shane, how about you? What do you see and observe to be the biggest barrier?
I think simply put, the biggest barrier actually is fear. So I think most people, investable capital, they would be looking at different ways that where they can make money and deposit their assets. So obviously, for people who are very familiar with traditional finance, they will be looking at maybe deposits in the bank or other robo apps, neobanks, which give them a higher returns. And we have now DeFi applications which provide even higher returns than that, right? With the trade-off being, a learning curve and other security issues. So I think to really get past the fear, there needs to be more educational activities across the board. So all of us from different DeFi platforms and anybody in the DeFi space, actually, to really grow the space, we need to contribute in that area in our own way. And I still remember like 4+ years ago when I first got into crypto, and it's just like a couple of $100 I wanted to try investing in crypto. It was such a painful process to go through from deposit, transferring, remitting money from a local bank to a US bank, and then signing up an account with like Coinbase or Gemini, and then depositing it to MetaMask or other blockchain wallets, and then going to all these steps. So part of overcoming this fear is also the whole user process, user journey of getting funds onto the blockchain. And I think this is one area where Transact is really excelling at. And yeah, I think you guys will be talking more about that later.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure Sami has a lot of thoughts about that. And you're so right. I've talked to so many people who are like, I think I have like $200 of ETH floating around somewhere, but I don't know how to find it. Because there's so many different steps in the process. And so, yeah. And I'm also
can help you with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm also glad you mentioned, the yields, Shane, because I think like something that people do have a lot of fear around money. They don't want to lose their money, and rightly so. People work hard for it. And I think one of the like kind of common pieces of advice you hear from your elders a lot is like, if something's too good to be true, don't trust it. And some of these yields that we're seeing are so like, they almost seem so good, too good to be true. And without really understanding how the economies work and how the process works, how the technology works, it's like the easiest thing to do in that situation is just to walk away and say, forget it. I'm not gonna touch it. Luigi, let's hear from you. What do you think is the biggest barrier?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the comments here make a lot of sense. The wallet is obviously something that needs to be a little bit more crisp in terms of onboarding users and allowing those users to, more easily interact with DeFi. But like, in terms of like thinking through the yield and whatnot, I think the yield is really an incentive mechanism just in the beginning of DeFi. I don't think that will be something unique to DeFi. I think over time, those yields will compress and are already compressing down. In some cases are below where they are in TradFi right now. So I don't think that DeFi yields will be the reason that people come to DeFi. I think that DeFi will be the top of the funnel for rest of crypto usage, meaning that all the primitives that we're starting to build today with respect to really cool different ways to swap assets and hedge assets and also be able to borrow against fungible assets or non-fungible assets will be sort of the way like social crypto is born and like, NFT space and gaming. And then, DeFi will be the foundation that facilitates all of that economic activity.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. And I love that you called the protocols primitives. That's actually the first I've heard that. But it's helpful and also honest, because it's like we really are in the beginning, and yet there's such a vision that people have about where we're going. So this is just the start. Sami, let's hear from you.
Okay. Well, at the risk of maybe repeating some of what people said, I think that the first thing is that you need to have a use case that's presented to the user in their language. Like, why do they want to do this thing, right? So I think, we all said a lot of definitions about DeFi, it's decentralized and there's no centralized intermediary and like all these kind of things. But like, how does that actually translate into an end user benefit, right? So maybe like higher yield rate or like interest rate that you can earn on your money. That's something like pretty clear. So and then you need people to actually like market that to consumers, right? So like I think some of the protocols are like do a really good job in what they're supposed to do, but they're not necessarily phrased in the language of like normal people. So that's the first part. That's the first thing is you need to have like a hook. Why do I want to do this thing? Okay, and then once you have the hook, you have friction points, right? So you have a bunch of friction points, which I think people have mostly mentioned already, like difficult language, hard to understand, setting up a wallet, getting crypto into your wallet, like actually buying the crypto, doing the transaction, paying the gas fees, understanding how that works, and then the fear also. I think we also mentioned that as well. Is like it's scary, right? So typically as an investor, you should balance risk and reward, right? So that the expected return is worth it, the risk you're getting, which in finance is called the Sharpe ratio. It's like the expected return divided by the standard deviation, and there's a lot of risk in DeFi right now, and so that's another barrier as well.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah, the language is so important as a writer. I totally appreciate that. I've created a whole career out of trying to interpret it and make it digestible for the average consumer. Okay, so let's now that we've kind of looked at the high level kind of conceptual side of it, let's go a little bit into like what these protocols look like, what they're actually doing, how they work. And all of you represent different protocols, different products, and different vantage points within this DeFi disco ball, if you will. There's so many different angles to look at it. So let's, I'm going to go to Fatima next, and I want to talk a little bit about Zapper. I want to give you the opportunity to tell us what Zapper does. The intention of Zapper was to create a platform in which DeFi users can view their entire Web3 portfolio, which is really exciting to think about, right? And we have, these apps exist in fintech right now where you can sync all of your different bank accounts and all of your different brokerage accounts and look at your portfolio. So Zapper, from what I understand, is doing that, but in the Web3 world. So you're syncing your wallets. So tell us a little bit about how that works, what ecosystem it's built in, and how it's going.
You explained it perfectly. It's like a super great analogy, like when you're looking at what does Zapper do, and to go back to your thing where you have somewhere $200 of Ethereum floating somewhere, but it's very hard for you to find it. One thing that happens on Zapper or like on those type of dashboards is when you connect your wallet, you kind of discover that you had those $200 laying around somewhere in a protocol or on a different chain that you tried out once and then never revisited. So to give a big rundown, it's once you connect your wallet on Zapper, you're able to see all your information in one place. So we're talking DeFi, various chains, obviously, if you tried various chains, various protocols, and then also we added on top of that NFTs. So let's say you're exposed to DeFi, to NFTs, you'll be able to see it all in one place. So we kind of say, we're the homepage to Web3. And it's like the first starting point for people to onboard, because the scary part in crypto and DeFi is you create your wallet, that's the first step, but then you're like, okay, where is the money? Where did I invest in my money, on what chain, on what protocol? So for us, you're able to view your assets. We support 14 different networks. So the main ones are Ethereum, we support Avalanche, we support Polygon, things like that. So users are able to see it across different protocols and networks. And then one thing that we realized a lot was, the blockchain is there, the information's there, but it's also very often siloed, maybe a little bit inaccessible for people, and hard to understand and to digest. And so you have all the information out there, but you don't know how to view it. And so we approached it from a problem, a user problem first, like Sami said, where we're trying to solve the biggest problem of users is like, I want to see my assets and I then want to interact with some protocols. So this is the big rundown, I would say. And then I would want to add regarding the current state of Web3, where there's a lot of solo exploration. So you have all this information on the blockchain, you kind of navigate into DeFi, then you're done with your exploration, you might navigate into NFTs, DAOs, it's all siloed. And so one thing that we've been trying to do in the past and now is connect all the dots together. So what's going on across all the blockchain? When you connect your wallet, you're able to see the links between NFT, DeFi, the protocols, the DAOs even, and you're able to explore other people's wallet. So this is like the main focus of Zapper right now, is to create and connect all the dots together of everything that's going on in the Web3 space.
I love that. I love that so much. You're right, because it is. I appreciate that. Like, so the siloed exploration. It is, and we talk about the rabbit holes a lot in crypto, but it really is like a rabbit hole, because you're like, okay, there's only so much I can focus on at once. Let me learn about this NFT thing, and the only way to kind of learn it is to do it, and then you do it, and then you're like, okay, well, now I'm ready to learn about altcoins, and let me go down that rabbit hole for a little while. But ideally they all connect, and and with some of the solutions that are out there, like you actually can transfer those currencies and use them amongst each other. And so I love that. Are there any kind of tax reporting capabilities that Zapper has? Like, does that make it easy for people to pull their tax records when they have to?
So, I mean, we do offer, CSV download of all the chains that you've been using. In any other way that, we're just curating all the information on the chain. So you can download the form and then you can use any tax software, really. But that's about it that we're offering. It's not a one-stop shop for your tax purposes, but it's more like if you want to view something on Zapper, you'll be able to see it. And a good exploration path about the rabbit holes that you mentioned, and this is how we are also presenting it. So that's a really good term, is you're able to discover things that you might not know about. And what I mean by that is, let's say I open my wallet and I'm part of a specific NFT collection. I can then click on it and view who else is part of this NFT collection. That makes it the first level of navigation. Then I click on this user who apparently, has 52 of those NFTs in the collection I love, and then I can see what this person does. So are they part of a specific protocol, or are they invested heavily in a specific chain? And we're rolling out very soon DAOs. So like, is this wallet part of any DAOs? Did they participate in voting? And so this is creating rabbit holes. And I can also, users can also try to drive trends. Well, maybe I'm following someone that I really trust for financial advice, and then I can see what type of things they're investing in. So from a DeFi perspective, this user, is very heavy on a specific protocol. This will all show on Zapper. And so this creates kind of this amazing rabbit hole of navigation.
I love that. And I can already think of some people that I would want to follow because I respect them and I think they're smart.
Exactly.
Cool. Thank you so much. Now, you mentioned Avalanche, so I'd love to hear from Luigi a little bit. Can you tell us, for the people who don't know about Avalanche? I always want to say Avalanche, but it's Ava Labs, correct? Am I right about that?
It's Ava Labs, but it is Avalanche.
Avalanche,
okay.
Enough.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to cement that in my brain right now. Avalanche is a layer 1 blockchain. Now, can you kind of give the audience the rundown about what that means and what the difference is between layer 1 and layer 2?
Sure. So yes, Avalanche is a layer 1 blockchain that really emulated out of Cornell University back in 2018. Mainnet was about 2 years ago, almost to the day. So we've seen some really good traction. What Avalanche boasts is it's a faster and cheaper L1 than Ethereum, for example, which is still a proof of work blockchain for a short amount of time, hopefully. So Avalanche is a proof of stake blockchain, which means that all of these applications and all of DeFi can run on top of this blockchain, and this is where you execute your transactions. Avalanche's main, I guess, sort of innovation that it brought to the space is its new consensus mechanism that allows for transactions to be finalized in less than 1 second. So once you submit a transaction, there's no dealing with confirmations or any of that clumsy stuff. It is finalized within a second, And that's a network that has over 1,600 nodes, so pretty decentralized. So that's what it is. From a high level, it's a blockchain, layer 1 blockchain. How is it different than layer 2s? Well, layer 2s are essentially executions or storage of data that happens off the chain and then settles on a layer 1 at a later date in order to lower transaction fees. So there is a distinction between the two. In terms of just Avalanche as a whole and kind of some of the things that you could do and sort of what's happened over the past year, as we've really sort of seen a lot of growth, especially in DeFi. We've had a lot of applications, ones that a lot of people know from Ethereum deploy on Avalanche, such as Aave, Curve, SushiSwap, Kyber, all these applications. And we also have a native ecosystem of DeFi applications that have deployed and that a lot of users are enjoying. That's things like Trader Joe, Banky, Platypus. And so there's a lot more of that developer community starting to grow on Avalanche. And, I myself use tools like Zapper. I'm pretty sure I've DM'd him a few times about getting assets listed. And, we are just here to be a different type of community, one that allows for really fast and cheap transactions in a decentralized way, and another alternative as it relates to a different chain that you can build your DeFi applications on.
I love that. Now, with these layer 1s, I spend a lot of time going to all of the different websites of these layer 1s for, the articles that I write and for the interviews that I'm setting up with people. And every one of them seems to talk about these kind of blazingly fast speeds, low costs, and eco-friendly tech. Those are kind of the 3 selling points. Eco-friendly meaning proof of stake compared to the original proof of work, which is kind of one of the biggest pushbacks against Bitcoin and the original Ethereum. How can consumers verify these? I don't want to say claims, but it's true. Yeah. But how can they kind of verify where, how do I evaluate essentially what is a good layer 1 if I'm a consumer and I'm trying to figure out where I want to spend my time in the DeFi ecosystem? Are there records of this similar? How does somebody kind of do R&D on that?
That's a phenomenal question because a lot of this stuff is quite technical. To be quite frank, it's almost like trying to evaluate the difference between AWS and DigitalOcean, and their node storage stuff.
Yeah,
so
and is it even necessary?
Complicated.
Is it even necessary?
That's the other question. It is, but I would say it's probably more necessary for the developers and the application builders to decide where they want to build their applications. They're naturally speaking a little bit more, they're technically astute, and so they should be able to understand the differences between chains. Some of the things to look into, I would say, some of the high level things you want to be focused on is the number of validators that the chain has. If it's a proof of stake chain, you want to understand the amount of value that is staked on the chain. At the end of the day, proof of stake is all about how much money is staked on the chain and how much it'll cost to attack it. That essentially is what protects it in a lot of respects. And then
can you say a little bit more about that? Can you kind of break that down for people?
Sure. So the idea behind proof of stake is that each validator needs to stake a certain amount of monetary value such that there is no DDoS, or that there is no way that people can sort of span the chain, or that the validator won't misbehave. So it's the difference between proof of stake and proof of work is in proof of work, you are expending energy, which inherently has a cost. Whereas in proof of stake, you are staking value, which you could either potentially lose or lose out on a reward if you do not validate in an honest way. So that's kind of the idea behind that. But the other thing you should really look into is something that is called finality, which is really important. So some chains, when you execute the transaction, when you click the button, you actually would be interested to find out that your transaction isn't actually finalized for, in the case of Bitcoin, an hour. For Avalanche, it's less than a second. So I don't know if anybody here has ever sent money to a centralized exchange, but you get that email that says, 40 confirmations left before your funds arrive or something like that. That's because of the way those blockchains are built. There's inherently a requirement for a certain amount of confirmations to happen to prove that, the odds of your transaction being reverted are basically zero. So there's just different designs. So those are some of the things I would look at a high level. If you really want to dive deep, you should go into like the white papers of how these consensus mechanisms are structured, and it can go, you can go down some pretty weird rabbit holes.
Awesome. No, but that's really helpful, because I think there's a lot of speculation about what the role of Ethereum will be in the future, given that it had the first mover advantage and it has such a strong user
Community.
base, and community. But there's a question as to what will kind of the more average consumer or like where will most of the activity happen, and will Ethereum be more of a validating layer as opposed to like where the activity is actually happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for me personally, I've been in the space since before Ethereum actually got any traction, and was always in the Ethereum community, being active there and participate in all the conferences, and admire the technology and the teams behind it. Ethereum has chosen this sort of L2 roadmap to scaling, meaning that Ethereum will be the base layer and that everything will roll up to it. That is the explicit choice that they have made. But one thing that's really interesting is to find out how many new users were onboarded onto chains that are not Ethereum in the past year or two. And so when I, talked to a lot of, like, we had a big event in Barcelona for the Avalanche Summit. And when I talked to a lot of the users, I was surprised to find out how many of them have never used Ethereum. And a lot of that is because they were simply priced out. They didn't want to send like, $200. They wanted to send $5 to try their first trade. And so, we've seen that new users have been onboarded into different chains: Avalanche, Polygon, Solana, etc.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. We could go down. There's so much to talk about there. So if anybody has any questions about that, please drop them in the Q&A, and I'll be sure to ask them in our last 10 minutes. Thank you, Luigi. I want to go to Shane next. Shane, Kyber is a blockchain-powered liquidity hub. Can you tell the audience, what does that mean? What is a liquidity hub, and how can it be blockchain-powered?
So just talking about liquidity, right? And in the context of DeFi and like decentralized exchanges, what we mean by liquidity is decentralized liquidity. So not liquidity that's on centralized platforms like centralized exchanges. So one of the key benefits of DeFi is the composability between different protocols, smart contract interaction between protocols, so that you can do wonderful kind of combinations like what Zapper is doing on their platform. And these decentralized applications require decentralized liquidity. So Kyber was launched, right? And it was born out of a need at a time back in 2017 that we saw a problem in the space, a liquidity problem, where firstly, there was no simple platform for people to easily swap tokens. And there was also no single place where they can access all the liquidity. And Fatima mentioned earlier about information being siloed, right, in space. Liquidity is also siloed in different platforms, even up to today. So we wanted to find a solution which could firstly, get people to swap tokens easily, and to access all the liquidity from different sources in one location for both like traders, liquidity providers, and developers that are trying to access this liquidity. So Kyber is a liquidity hub in the sense that we kind of pool all these different liquidity from multiple sources into a single place where anybody can access. And our core product and the main interface, right, that people use would be kyberswap.com. So Kyber Network is kind of like where we develop solutions and software to access all these different liquidity sources. And KyberSwap is, you can look at it as a protocol or an interface where people can access it, and developers can access the documentation through it as well. So we target three specific audiences. So one is traders, right? So for traders, they can come to KyberSwap to access tokens at the best rates, because we integrate with different DEXs on multiple chains. We are on 11 chains right now, including Avalanche. And like one of the reasons why we built on we believe the future is multi-chain, right? And which chains will actually generate the most activity and attract the most users really depend on many things. Luigi and the other labs teams were really helpful in onboarding different decentralized applications. So we have a first-hand experience with that. I also went to the event in Barcelona. So a lot of people, like you said, right? The first time experiencing DeFi and crypto was actually on Avalanche. And for me, that was surprising as well because I started on Ethereum. And we think that for Kyber Swap, we want to allow users from multiple chains to access this liquidity and trade tokens at the best rates through Kyber Swap. And for liquidity providers, our platform also allows people to deposit tokens to earn fees from the trading activity on Kyber Swap. And the third target audience would be developers that are trying to build decentralized applications on these different blockchains. And they need to, instead of building their own native swapping solution on their app, maybe they are like a GameFi app, which is selling NFTs. They need to focus on the gaming UI. They have no time, or resources to actually build their own swapping solutions or payment solutions for NFT. They can integrate Kyber Swap's API to also gain the best token rates for their users. So yeah, in general, we target traders, liquidity providers, and developers that want to and make use of our token swapping aggregation solution.
Thank you. Now, okay, I want to kind of address that question of like the fear and the kind of too good to be true narrative that we see sometimes, because I'll tell you, I've talked to so many different financial planners and these are like certified financial planners who are, dealing with mostly retail investors who are just, they're looking to kind of invest passively and save enough to retire, right? And so I talked to a lot of people who represent these folks who are kind of, there's a protectiveness, right? And I'm looking, I look at your website and I notice like the maximum APR that is advertised is 896%. And I'm curious if you could kind of talk about the sustainability of that and like where are these rewards coming from when we're talking about yields and staking and lending and swapping, like what is actually creating the possibility for like that level of a return? And is it just because we're kind of in this big boom right now, or is that kind of baked into the model? Can you kind of break that down a little bit for people?
Sure. So with regards to that particular APR you are quoting, yeah, I would have to check on that. I think our average for liquidity pools are usually like between the 5 to 30% plus, and it depends also whether there are farming pools involved. But in general, the APR is what you're seeing. It derives from the 24-hour fees that are collected from trading activity in that particular pool, and then it's annualized, right? So that is for the kyberswap.com platform. So whenever there's more volume going through that particular liquidity pool, so more people swapping tokens and tokens are being accessed from that liquidity pool, there's more volume, there's more trading fees that is accrued, and these fees go to the liquidity providers. And an estimation of your return is the kind of APR that we show on our website. But that is for the trading platform, Kyber Swap. So we also have a Kyber DAO. So this is a staking platform for KNC tokens.
And for those who don't know, a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. Do you want to just define that really briefly for people?
Yeah, exactly like you said. You can look at it as a community platform where people can stake their tokens for a variety of use cases. For us, specifically for Kyber, when you stake KNC tokens, you have a right to vote on proposals that direct the development of the protocol, any changes to the DAO itself or the token itself, and other like important proposals. And in return, we actually give a cut. The DAO actually gives a cut of the trading fees to the KNC holders that stake and vote. and that APR there would be like, different from the liquidity pool APR that you were talking about earlier.
I love that. And that's, I think what you're speaking to is a key difference between like the Web 2 model and the Web 3 model. And people talk about that a lot in this space, but for those who don't know, the Web 3 model is providing more community ownership through utility tokens and governance tokens, so that the people who are essentially building these platforms can also kind of collectively take part in ownership and receive the proceeds from that. So awesome.
To your other one part of your question was about the concerns over like very high APR and stuff, right? So I think and I think a lot of us are also still reeling from some of the recent incidents in the space, right, where people were attracted to very high APR, but they don't really bother about any of the security risk, or they don't look further deeper into the token model or the platform. So I think it's really hard to prevent people from, because that's one of the intrinsic motivation for people coming to DeFi. Obviously, there are many other use cases, like basic swapping, lending and borrowing, or GameFi, NFTs. But earning yield for depositing tokens, that is like a very strong motivation for a lot of people, and we can't ignore that. I think it's very important that there is like each project needs to have to take up the responsibility of warning their users, right, of the risks, and that there are certain risks that can't be mitigated 100%, right? And for example, like a phishing a scam where somebody goes to a wrong website, right, and you can't prevent that. The wrong website, right, it could be advertising yields that are 100 times bigger than the official website of the company, and they go there. So that kind of education is definitely still necessary, and every project is responsible for their users in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have talked to some people who like that aspect of DeFi. They like that aspect of crypto. Like it's trustless, trust, but what's the expression? Verify, don't trust. So they like that kind of independent research component where everybody's responsible for their own behavior. But that does kind of lead to a larger question about what responsibility these new DeFi platforms and protocols have in an environment that's unregulated, that doesn't necessarily tell them they have to look out for their people, but there is a question about what responsibility to people have. So thank you so much for speaking to that. We are close to the end of our time, and I want to hear from Sami a little bit before there's a couple of Q&As that are popping up in the chat. But yeah, Sami, we've talked to a lot of different people today who have different, we've talked to somebody from a blockchain, and then two kind of protocols or dApps that are built on chain. Can you talk a little bit about how Transak fits into that equation, and what Transak is doing to create solutions that actually can be embedded within the dApp so that people can easily on-ramp? And give us the definition of on-ramp too, for people who don't know.
Okay, all right. So Transak is a developer integration that allows dApps to onboard their users from fiat to crypto. So to put it very simply, it's something that you install in your app, and then the end user of that app can now buy crypto using credit card, debit card, Apple Pay, Google Pay, bank transfers, and local payment methods also we're shipping in different countries as well. And the reason why an app might want to do that is to really help to onboard their users. So we work with several types of companies. So we work with wallets such as MetaMask, Trust Wallet, Ledger, are all Transact customers. We also work with finance applications such as Beefy Finance, Cake DeFi. So that's both DeFi and CeFi we work with. And then we also work with games, so like Splinterlands, Decentralized, Zrun, and all of these apps have this common problem of users are landing on their website, but they don't have the necessary crypto in order to use that app. When I say the necessary crypto, it could be that they don't have crypto at all. So they have like a wallet, it's empty. They need to put something in it, right? So like if you download MetaMask, you don't have anything in your wallet. You buy your first crypto, and then you can use whatever dApp from there. it could also be that they have the wrong crypto, right? So let's say like someone lands on an Avalanche app, then they may not have tokens on that chain. They may have tokens on another chain, and so Transact can actually on-ramp them directly into that chain. So you wouldn't have to pay any costs of like gas fees of other chains and bridging into that chain, etc. And yeah, I guess the definition of a fiat on-ramp is a way to buy crypto that's also a developer integration. So it's like an onboarding tool for dApps.
I love that. Now, are you finding, because at this point, how many partners does Transact have at this point?
We have around 100.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you finding that most people are liking kind of like a white label approach where like the integration is seamless and it's kind of branded and built right into the experience? Or are you finding that people, like what are kind of the preferences that you're hearing from the people who are building?
Yeah, I think that our aim is to be somewhat white label, somewhat seamless. A lot of developers don't want to build their own user interface. So in that case, most people just use our widget because it's easy to install. It's like a few lines of code. But we're increasingly getting a lot of developers who are like doing more of their own UIs, and they're passing more configuration in the backend. So you would like pass the wallet address in the backend. You would put the order details in the backend, and you would use your own user interface for all of that kind of stuff. Personally, Transact doesn't have an appetite to really be a consumer-facing company. We're a developer-focused company. So our mission is all about empowering developers, and we leave the consumer relationship to the apps themselves. Having said that, we do have like millions of registered users, hundreds of thousands of which have KYC'd with us. So we do have like a user base of our own that apps benefit from when they work with us. So whenever an app works with us, they have access to all of those KYC'd users. But we try to keep that relationship pretty light, and we leave most of the user engagement to the app themselves.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so we've got about 9 minutes left, and I see 3 questions in the Q&A. So I'll actually start with you, Sami, since I have you. The first one is from Puya, who wants to know what are some of the things that Transact has planned for the rest of the year?
Okay, so off-ramp is going to be shipped soon. I'm sure lots of people will be very happy to hear that. So off-ramp means the ability to sell crypto as well as buy. So like, on board and off board from crypto. We'll also be shipping a lot of local payment methods in different countries. So different countries around the world will have more like access to bank transfers, other local payment methods. And what else do we have? We're in the process of launching Transact One, which is a kind of one-step to protocol. So like let's take, for example, you wanted to use a DeFi protocol. Currently, with the fiat on-ramp, you have to buy let's say you buy some stablecoin, and then you would invest that stablecoin into the protocol. With Transact One, you can integrate it so that the smart contract call is executed in one step. So the user just invests fiat, let's say like $1,000 or 1,000 euros, and then that gets converted into a DeFi position or an NFT or any kind of smart contract call. So those are some of the features we have, and a bunch more, but I'll leave it there for now.
Okay, thank you. Wow, that's really interesting. And I feel like that probably opens up lots of possibilities, because there's I think one of the barriers we haven't talked about is just like the sheer conversion math that happens in your head. And once you get it straightened out, then the market changes like 10 minutes later. So, or 10 seconds later sometimes. So that's interesting to think about, being able to take positions in your local currency without having to do the extra step, until of course, maybe you cash out or something like that, or change the position. Okay, great. So the next question is from Marcelo, and I'll ask it, and then whoever feels kind of called to speak on it, unmute and express yourself. So Marcelo asks, crypto gives billions of unbanked people access to financial services, but how can these people get funds from their local currencies into crypto? No bank means no credit card. Many people, for example, in developing countries, use SMS mobile-based wallets. Is transferring funds from such sources into crypto something that can be supported in the future?
Very, very briefly, the answer is yes. So we're looking at mobile payment methods in Southeast Asia. There are also some scenarios where people may not even have that. They may want to do it at cash, and there are like local on-ramps where you can actually take cash into a local store, and you can actually buy crypto like physically from the store owner. We're not planning to support that in the very immediate future, I would say. But definitely like mobile payment methods in Southeast Asia is something we're very interested in. Yeah.
Awesome. Does anybody else want to chime in on that?
I think beyond cash, there could also be a trade with actual goods, right? So meaning local vendors actually accepting the crypto directly for a purchase at a store. And I think I've read of some instances of this in the Philippines, where certain stores accept like GameFi tokens like XC, right? And yeah, if that is more prevalent, that's also another kind of onboarding solution in a way.
Yeah, that is really interesting to me. And I know like we're seeing kind of big brands accepting crypto, like fashion brands and entertainment companies and Tesla and companies like that. But it will be, I think, really interesting when the mom and pop stores have a setup to be able to accept crypto. Cool. Anyone else, or should we move on to the next one? All right. Okay. The next one is how will banks? It's from Vivek. Pardon me if I mispronounced your name. Vivek asks, how will banks transition in the DeFi economy?
So I guess I could jump in here a little bit. I did work at one of the largest banks for a long time, and also have experience in DeFi. Obviously, it's unclear still to this day. And I have many conversations with most of these banks to educate them on DeFi and also to kind of see where they stand. It is a little unclear in terms of how that's going to happen. And inherent in the innovation in DeFi, there is a little bit of regulatory arbitrage, and so it's unclear whether or not the banks can participate in that right now, depending on the jurisdiction. But I do think that there is a willingness in some respects to play with what's referred to as something called, regulated DeFi or compliant DeFi, which is effectively DeFi, but one that doesn't really skirt the KYC or AML regulations. AML being something where when you actually execute transactions with somebody, you do something known as KYC, so that your customer isn't on any blacklists or in any jurisdictions that you're not allowed to interact with. The current DeFi does not really adhere to this, and still a lot of regulatory concerns to be addressed in terms of those regards. But with respect to the banks, they do want to interact in DeFi if it's done in those manners. And at Avalanche, we're actually working on an institutional subnet. We didn't really talk about subnets today, but subnets are a way that Avalanche can effectively horizontally grow its blockchain and add many different blockchains on the network. And one of those would be a permissioned subnet that would allow for all the DeFi applications to deploy, but allow the institutions to actually also sort of interact with it, because there will be KYC and AML at the chain level. So I think it's TBD in terms of whether banks will actually be participants or be sort of expendable in some of their business lines.
Thank you. That's so helpful. And okay, so our very last question, this is me resisting going down another rabbit hole. There's so much to be said there. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Luigi. That was great. Our last question is from Oscar. Oscar would like to know, what do you think about tokenizing assets like startups or real estate? I think this means the intermediary will have control of the value of the assets and may influence the natural market prices. Big question. 2 minutes left. No pressure. But does anybody want to jump in on tokenizing assets such as a startup or real estate?
So unless somebody else wants to I definitely think this is one of the things we'll see in crypto, probably one of on the next move, because it's natural, right? Like I worked at a bank where we were confirming swaps via paper. And the only time you knew when there was an error on the execution of a swap is 6 months later when the floating payment came in instead of a fixed payment on a swap. That's like, that's unreasonable. And so tokenizing these assets will inherently make them easier to transact, will lower a lot of the operational overhead and increase transparency. So it's just a matter of regulatory, a lot of entities figuring out some of the regulatory concerns, I think.
And I also think there's too a question of like who, because the smart contract will exist into perpetuity. So like I think there's a question too of like who is the entity that is attributed to the smart contract. Like from what I understand with real estate, like I can't think of the example right now, but you have to think about like, are you setting up an LLC? Are you creating like, who owns the wallet address? Does it go to a company? Does it go to a business? Like, does it go to an individual? And like, I think there's a lot of like legal questions to be answered there.
Yeah, there are some solutions being built for those types of things, and I think that's more. Those are more like semantics and solvable issues. The more complicated thing is like getting adoption at a wide level. In a way that matters, right? You could put two houses on the blockchain, but does anybody care if you don't have, all of them on, right? So,
well, it's also a question of does it legally mean anything, right? Because like from a tech point of view, it's not that hard for me to say like, hey, this smart contract represents like a house or like a company, and like I'm going to give everyone shares. But from a legal point of view, there's no legal basis that actually means that you own the house, right? And then if I send someone like some of those tokens, there's no legal basis that means that actually like I've sent them like part of the ownership of the house. So it's really like a legal problem more than a tech problem. And I think that there should be a lot more like hackathons and collaborations between like legal and tech, and actually getting that legal finality is the main challenge here, in my opinion. But once unlocked would be huge, right? You would connect these assets up to like so much markets and so much protocols. I think that once we get over that boundary, it would be insanely huge.
I love that. Thank you so much. Okay, well, we are at time, unfortunately. I want to just thank the panelists one more time for your time and for your insights. I know that everybody really appreciated it. And does anybody have any final words to chime in and say in the last, I don't know, maybe take 30 seconds each? Okay. All right, well then I'll ask one more question. If you had one word, how can we make DeFi more human? And we'll do a round table and then we'll close out. 30 seconds. Sami, let's start with you. How can we make DeFi more human?
It's not one word, but talk to customers.
Love that. Thank you. Luigi?
Well, Sami took mine, so now I'm in trouble. But I would say just make the interfaces a little bit more simple and the language a little more readable rather than using all this jargon.
Yeah, love it. Shane?
So it's one word, right? So if I could choose a word, it's like empower. So we are kind of empowering users in DeFi to have custody of their own funds and manage their own funds in a decentralized way, and empower them to have a voice through DAOs and governance. And yeah, just like empowering users.
Thank you. Fatima, last word.
So much pressure. Interconnection. I think I mentioned that earlier, but connecting the dots of everything that's going on in Web3 is definitely going to empower users, make it simpler, and that's going to make more sense. I think this is going to unlock the next step.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you again, panelists, and thank you to the audience for the brilliant questions. This was so wonderful. And keep an eye on Transact. Follow us on social, follow us on LinkedIn, and keep your eye out on the YouTube channel if you feel like this conversation is going to be up there very shortly. And stay tuned for the next one. We aim to do regular Transact talks. So keep following us and join us for the next one. We love having you. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.